So you want to build yourself a £600 gaming PC? Well, you've come to the right place, because I've already done that for you. This PC costs £593. I'm going to walk you through all of the components that are inside it, how they all go together, and at the end of the video, we'll have a look at some performance numbers and see just how well this little compact PC actually performs. First things first, the CPU, the most important part of your PC and the brain of your whole PC. This is the Ryzen 5 5600. It is a pretty budget CPU and costs around £120 at the time of filming. This pretty much is the only option at the real low end of the market. You can look at maybe an i3, but you generally want those more cores for the games of today. With this CPU being on the AM4 platform, you are limited with your upgradability, but a second-hand 5800X3D is still an amazing processor for the money if you can pick one up. For the motherboard, we've gone for the MSI B550M Pro VDH Wi-Fi. Basically, the person I'm building this PC for wanted Wi-Fi, so we had to spend that little bit more money. We could have obviously got a card and added it in, or a USB adapter, but it just looks so much cleaner, and this is a pretty good motherboard overall. We get 4 RAM slots, 2 M.2 slots, as well as it being a micro ATX motherboard. It works perfectly well with the case we have chosen as well. A little bit more on that case later on, but first up we have our SSD and our RAM. A 1TB Crucial P3 SSD covers pretty much everything you need. RAM, 2x8 gig sticks, so 16 gigs in total, 3600 megahertz. Power supplies aren't very fun. It's a 650 watt power supply from Be Quiet. It's not modular, it's not semi-modular, 80 plus bronze, but it will do the job. It'll give us plenty of power for what we have today and also some upgrades further down the line. The most important part of any gaming PC is the graphics card. And with a budget like ours, we are kind of restricted as to what we can go for. Coming in at under £200, you have the RX 6600. If you look at used graphics cards, you could obviously get a more powerful graphics card for around the same sort of price, but this is a build for somebody, they wanted new parts, and just that extra peace of mind. So we've gone for the RX 6600. They also said they planned upgrading in the future once they had a little bit more money. So for now, the 6600 will do the job absolutely fine. Perfect for 1080p gaming. It does only have 8GB of VRAM, which is obviously starting to show its age in some games nowadays, but it should be more than adequate for what he wants. And if he plans on upgrading in a couple months' time, I don't think he's going to have any issues with this GPU, especially when he's gaming at 1080p anyway. And then last, and certainly not least, and not something I had to record because I forgot about it, is the case. This is the MSI MAG Forge M100R. It's a micro ATX case with 4 ARGB fans included as standard, a tempered glass side panel, a full mesh front panel. So for £50, I don't think we're going to have many complaints. And spoiler alert, the fans are actually pretty quiet. So let's jump in. First things first, let's get everything unwrapped and we'll start with our RAM. Open the slots and simply click them into place. Next up, we want to remove the heatsink off the top of the SSD. It's just a case of undoing a couple screws either side to remove it. Once we have removed it, we want to make sure that we peel off this little blue piece of film. Then we just line up the SSD, slot it into place, and then we screw it back down, making sure you tighten each side evenly. Next up, we have the CPU, our Ryzen 5 5600. It's pretty straightforward to install. You just need to line up the corner of the CPU with the corner located on the socket. It's clearly indicated by this tiny little triangle. Lift up the little arm on the socket, line up your CPU into the holes, and then lower down the arm again and we'll be good to go. To install our CPU cooler, we'll need to remove the default mounting hardware. Next up, grab the CPU cooler out of the box that comes with your CPU. Fortunately, it comes with some thermal paste pre-applied. So then it's just a case of lining it up with 4 holes on the motherboard and then screwing it down to make sure that you screw down in each corner of the CPU, applying a little bit of pressure to each corner as you do it. And then finally going back round and tightening each corner all the way. That way you'll get a nice even spread of pressure across the CPU whilst installing. Then connect the CPU fan into where it says CPU fan 1 and then give the cable a little bit of a tidy up. Next up, you want to grab your I/O shield. Make sure you don't forget about this. But if you're using a motherboard that's a bit more expensive, these can come pre-fitted. The case we're using today did require some extra standoffs to be installed. Fortunately, they are included in the accessory pack. Then we can grab our motherboard, making sure to line it up with the I/O shield at the back, and then make sure that none of the metal is poking into any of our USBs or other ports. Once in, be sure to fix it down with the screws that come with the case. There's about 9 or 10 or so just make sure you've got every hole filled with the screw. Next up is cable management, and the worst part of any PC build. With this case here, we have plenty of cables thanks to those ARGB fans, and they're getting mixed up with all of our front panel connections. So what I do advise is to just push them out of the way so we can fit our power supply in. Grab the power supply and slot it in. Make sure you line it up with the screw holes at the back, and then make sure you fix it into place. Once screwed in, you want to grab your 8-pin CPU cable and poke it through the hole at the top right of the case. Then you can also grab the 24-pin and plug this around the side of the motherboard. After that, it's just a big mess of cables that we need to organize and tidy up. The biggest culprit of this is those ARGB fans. Like I mentioned earlier, do take your time tidying these things up and try and keep them out of the way. But don't forget to plug in the SATA connection so that we can actually have some lighting and enjoy the lights on our fans. Then it's just a case of tidying things up as you go, paying close attention to each and every individual cable and not getting them mixed up. I'll give you a quick rundown of exactly where you should be plugging everything in on the motherboard. The CPU 8-pin cable plugs in the top left and the 24-pin cable plugs into the right hand side. The HD audio plugs in down at the bottom left, the USB in the middle, USB 3.0 on the far right hand side, and then next to that is where the Fridley front panel connections are. Oh, and we can't forget our ARGB header. There's one at the top and the bottom of this motherboard. Then the splitter for our fans are connected at the top right hand corner. Now that's all covered, it's just a case of some more tidying up around the back. When you have so many ARGB cables and fan cables, you start to appreciate the more expensive cases with built-in cable management a lot more. Finally, we get to the most exciting part, installing the graphics card. But first we need to snap these removable expansion slots off. More expensive cases will likely have screws you'll need to remove instead. Once that's done, we can have a look at our graphics card in all its glory. The MSI Mech card has a really nice design and looks really clean overall. To get it installed, we'll need to remove this cover over the PCIe connector. Then we'll need to line it up with the two slots we just removed and the PCIe slot on the motherboard. Once lined up, give it a push until it clicks into place. Then we just need to screw it into place to make sure it's secure. As it's only a small card, we only need the two screws. Then finally, we can connect the 8-pin power connector to the GPU. Do a bit more tidying up, and then we're ready to get things set up. Before you finish tidying everything up and putting all the panels back on, it's good to boot it up first. We'll want a desk mat, a keyboard, and a mouse. Then finally grab your monitor, making sure you connect your HDMI or DisplayPort to the ports on the graphics card. Then hit that power button. It might take a while for something to appear at first, and the PC might turn off and on a couple of times, but assuming that everything's gone to plan, we should boot into the BIOS. Whilst here, we want to enable the XMP profile of the RAM so it's running at its maximum speed, and then we can plug in our USB stick with a copy of Windows 11 installed. Save the changes in the BIOS and the PC should reboot into the Windows installation screen. Choose the option I don't have a product key, as you can acquire this later. Then just keep clicking next and you're golden. So now that's all done, let's have a look at this PC and how well it performs. Let's start things off with Halo Infinite. At the medium preset in multiplayer, we're comfortably averaging around 80 to 100 FPS and it's super smooth. At the low preset, you can expect to comfortably sit just over 100 FPS, which is great to see. And honestly, the low preset in Halo Infinite still looks really good. Next up is Hogwarts Legacy. Running around in Hogsmeade is one of the most demanding areas of the game, and we're comfortably averaging around 60 FPS in the medium preset without any upscaling with FSR. Of course, you could use FSR to give you that extra bump in FPS as well, though it might make the image look a little bit softer. Whilst the 1% lows do dip to around the 30 to 40 FPS mark, providing you make use of a FreeSync monitor, you won't notice the dips as much. Moving on to something a lot more fast-paced, we have Doom Eternal running at the Nightmare preset. We comfortably average around 170 to 180 FPS, which is great to see, as this game still looks absolutely fantastic. It really lets the RX 6600 show that it's capable of delivering a great gaming experience, and Doom Eternal is a really enjoyable game to play. Finally, another older game is Shadow of the Tomb Raider, but it's a good game to put a bit more load on the CPU, and this is where we saw our CPU get the hottest during gaming, topping out around 74 degrees Celsius. Our GPU managed to stick at around 65 to 66 degrees in the 4 games I tested. On average, at the absolute highest preset without any upscaling, we managed to get 85 FPS in Tomb Raider. Again, it's an older game, but it still looks really good today. Here's just a quick graph so you can see the numbers that I recorded whilst testing these games, and so you can see which preset I was using. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this PC. I think it's a good entry point for a lot of PC gamers. Of course, you could cut costs here and there with a cheaper motherboard or power supply. Alternatively, you could easily increase the performance of this machine by upgrading the RX 6600 to a 6700 XT for around £100 more. Of course, if you also wanted to upgrade to the more future-proof AM5 platform, that will put you a lot closer to the £700 to £750 price point, which is a little bit more than we are willing to pay today. There's still quite a decent amount of upgrades you can easily make here though. Like I mentioned in the intro, an upgrade to a 5800X3D down the line will give you some big improvements, assuming you can get it for a good price second hand. You can easily add another 16GB of RAM and more storage too. I would recommend grabbing an upgraded CPU cooler when you can, as it will improve the thermals on the CPU, as well as the looks and sound of the system too. The system overall is pretty quiet under load too. I could barely hear the PC whilst I was gaming, and I was just using the speakers built into the monitor behind me. Overall though, I'm pretty happy with the PC. I'm looking forward to the kind of PC builds we can do in the future, with a bit more or even a smaller budget. Anyway, that brings us to the end of the video. What do you guys think? Have you managed to hit the nail on the head here with the price, or do you think I could have cut some more corners and got that price even lower? Let me know down in the comment section down below with your suggestions and your opinions, and if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a like as well, and if my face hasn't offended you, don't forget to click subscribe down below as well. If you're interested in checking out any of the parts I used in this PC, or any extras I may have mentioned, make sure you check the description for my Amazon affiliate links. I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Cheers.